Welcome back to the WRPF podcast, guys. I'm your host, Alex Uslar, episode 31. We're rolling into starting to interview a lot of the roster for the upcoming Ghost Clash 3. First up on that roster, I have Kiersten Nall, a.k.a. Kiersten Skurlock, if you guys are checking her open powerlifting history, right? She's been married. I'm sure she'll have that updated soon on open powerlifting. She hasn't competed in a while. Her last competition was the first Ghost Clash in 2022. So by the time you guys see her on the platform again, it will be over 2 years since that last competition. Kiersten is a multiple all-time world record holder. She has the fourth highest squat of all time in wraps with 666, my personal favorite number. So yeah, there's your long-winded intro. Welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on the podcast.
Hell yeah. So the way we like to kind of format this, the way we like to go at it, I know there's a lot of things to talk about. The hiatus, stopped from competition for a while. I know you mentioned to me you were having shoulder surgery. We'll get there, but I like to always rewind it back, start from the beginning, and find out what introduced you to the beautiful sport of powerlifting. What were you doing before that transitioned you into powerlifting?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I was like full on high school cheerleader. Like I did competition cheerleading. Before that, I was in gymnastics and power tumbling. So I was constantly like in a gym setting, but not the same gym setting. So when I got to high school, I was in regular PE class for 2 years, and then my junior year, well, it was really my sophomore year, but my junior year, I signed up for athletic PE. So during athletic PE, we were following the Bigger, Faster, Stronger program, and I learned how to squat and I learned how to bench and did trap bar deadlifts, and honestly just started like loving it more than I really liked being a cheerleader. So when I graduated, I continued to lift weights. I worked at a fitness gym for 4 years when I was in college. And I lifted the whole time that I was in college, and I cheered in college. And then when I graduated, I did my first powerlifting meet. So that was in 2015.
So let's rewind really quick. So when you were doing cheer before you signed up for that athletic PE, did you already feel like you had some kind of advantage? Were you like, I know there's different positions in cheer, like, you know, in the bottom, stronger, holding up the girls and stuff. Were you already an advantage that you thought like, man, maybe I'm strong as shit?
Yeah, that was definitely a thing. So in cheerleading, obviously you can have boys and you can have girls. So you really want your girls to be just as strong as your boys are, so that like you just have more talents spread across the floor. Just the more you can do as an athlete, as an individual, just brings more to your team when you're on that team. So my specialty was definitely strength. Like I was a base and I was a back spot. So I was the person throwing the person up and I was the person catching the person. So when I was in college, I was on a co-ed team, and basically they could utilize me as like an extra guy on the team because I was able to do the same stunts that the boys were. So, I would say when I lifted and did cheer in college, I was extremely, extremely strong. I was like 160 pounds and just like shredded and just so strong for that sport and just like so athletic. And then I got out of college and just adult life hit me so hard. But I didn't do my first meet until after college, just because I was like, I need a little bit more time to like be good at what I want to be good at and not just go in with whatever numbers I can hit that day.
So
I followed the Cube program going into my first meet. So that was interesting.
That was one of the first programs I followed too. So we'll definitely talk about that in those early days of powerlifting. But something I like to talk about with my female guests is the overall trajectory and growth of female powerlifting since when someone like yourself first got exposed to it in the early 2010s, 2010, 2011. Kind of talk about what that time frame looks like. Because like you said, your first competition wasn't until you were 22, but you'd already been strength training since you were like 16, 17 in high school. In
Yeah.
that period, that's like 2010 era, right? So
Mhm.
CrossFit was around, stuff like that, but how normalized was it, if at all, that you were a female doing that advanced PE class and getting jacked and shredded compared to like your other cheerleading counterparts?
So the other girls, so being 160 pounds, 170 pounds in high school, like I was still so much bigger than like high school girls. When you really think about it, like my teammates were 100 pounds to like 130 pounds max. So it was just like, I'm still like, not only am I stronger, I'm just like towering over everybody. And I just like feel so much bigger, even though like comparatively in powerlifting, like 165 female is like an average size girl. Like that's, she can be strong as shit, but she's still kind of on the smaller side. Um, but yeah, I never really fit in that aspect. So when I got into the gym, it was something that I felt like, okay, I'm actually good at this. And like, I feel good doing this. And like, I like what it's doing to my body. Because when I first got into lifting, when I first got into just any sports, like the only thing I knew how to do was run. And so I just was never able to like get that physique that I wanted or to like be able to control my weight in that way. So when I started adding on all that muscle and like seeing the way my body changed and looked, it helped me a lot more mentally as a woman to accept like that number on the scale because I didn't hate what I was seeing in the mirror.
That's awesome. So,
Sorry, I rambled there.
oh no, I like, I'm king of rambles. Please ramble away. So, I mean, and that's super motivating to so many females out there, and why and how so many females have found the gym, powerlifting, previously it being CrossFit, and just
Mhm.
being comfortable in all those different types of bodies and being happy with yourself, right? So it's very
Yeah,
cool that even though you were like so different than everyone else, you felt proper and you were happy with where you were, and you
yeah.
ultimately continued that. So,
Well, and for
go ahead.
me too, it was like this is only like making my sport of cheerleading because we did competitive cheer. Like this is just making me a better teammate because I'm so much stronger and I'm able to do more in the routines. And yeah, I would say doing both at the same time really benefited me as an athlete and like just overall wellness. But you keep touching on CrossFit, and that was something in high school that I was also like forced to do at one point in time. So during athletic PE, our lifting days were Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then our CrossFit days were Tuesday, Thursdays. So that's kind of how they would like introduce the sport of CrossFit to us. And then also my high school cheerleading coach, my senior year, was a big CrossFit um, person, and she just would drill us with the conditioning on our practice days so hard. But that led me into like wanting to do track and field. So it's just like, yeah, I started out kind of lifting weights, doing CrossFit, and then I worked at a fitness gym and I got more in. I met a bodybuilder and I was like, what is this? Like, this is crazy. And then I wanted to do that, but shortly figured out like I don't have the buckle down ability to be a bodybuilder. So I started lifting
Okay.
heavier. Yeah. I started lifting heavier and I fell in love with powerlifting.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
again, going back to that high school period, because it's all these things you're telling me about high school are so cool and so unique, because
Mhm.
not many people had that advantage where like literally their teachers were into a sport. If you want to, the sport of
Yeah.
cross, you got exposed to bigger, stronger, faster as your strength program in your PE class. Hell, I remember in my high school, I tried doing a PE class, and holy shit, it was a shit show. And funny enough, like 6 or 7 years later, I went back to that high school weight room when I was working for
Yeah.
Hybrid, and we were able to teach the football team, and God, it was even bigger of a shit show. So you were
Yeah.
at a pretty big advantage that you were able to learn things well early on, right? It was as far as
Yeah.
the technique, movement, and kind of
Oh,
understanding of what powerlifting is. Yes.
so I would argue that I was the athlete that was just naturally gifted and strong, but I was so hard-headed and I could not figure out form. Even still till today, I'm like struggling big time with figuring out like how to deadlift still. And it's like we're 10 years into this now. You should know how to engage your lats by now, but yeah. Um, I'm definitely an athlete that has to learn through doing things and doing them the wrong way and doing them over and over and over again until I throw myself into the ground and then I finally am stubborn enough to do it the right way. So, but I feel like you kind of have to do that in a sense to become a master of what you are doing. You have to, go through all those hard little things and like play these brain games with yourself in a way to become really good at that movement. So I like to do that, but it's so frustrating while I'm getting through that. But yeah, I was not a fast learner. My numbers did not progress when I first started lifting for like almost 4 years. And then I hired a coach and he put like 300 pounds in my total in like 2 months.
So when
So
you refer to that time period of those 3 years, was that from when you started competing?
yeah, like I started competing in 2015 and I hired, I guess, well, I started competing in 2013 for like deadlift only contest, push pull contest. And then by 2017, 18, I think I had hired my first coach. So my numbers had only gone up about like a 914 total to like a 975 total. So just like hadn't really changed that much. Like I had even went up a couple weight classes and like just still couldn't like figure out the reps and sets and like how volume worked and just like how to prepare for a meet. So when I hired that coach, it was like everything just fell into place.
So it kind of take me through that period before 2015, before when you first started competing. Because again, a 900-pound total, especially at that time, over 900-pound total for a female was pretty damn strong in 2015. Like
Mm-hmm.
there still wasn't a ton of females whatsoever in powerlifting. So
Yeah.
to rewind pre 2015, I want to know ultimately, like since that time, 2010 in high school, did you know what powerlifting was? Did you know what the sport of powerlifting was? Were you watching those people? Or what was your exposure to kind of familiarize yourself? Oh, this is a thing where I can go compete. Here are the people I'm looking at. What, if any, predominant females were you looking at? Were you looking at males? Again, Brandon Lilly's cube method, very popular male power lifter at that time, right? So take me through that.
So when I was in college, I dated a guy that went to my gym that I worked at, and he introduced me to like the actual competition portion of powerlifting. But prior to that, there was people in our gym that either you did bodybuilding or you did powerlifting or you went in that CrossFit room and like you just stayed in there and didn't do anything else. Like that's how our gym was kind of divided. It used to be an old racquetball court, so they switched it into just like every room had a different style of like equipment in there. So one room was a dumbbell room, one room was a barbell room, one room was a leg press and like hammer strength room, and one was a cable room. So it was really nice, but you could kind of figure out like who was training what. So the people that focused on bodybuilding would always just be in their spandex and their tank tops and just like hella shredded and ripped. And then the people that were doing powerlifting would always be in the barbell room, like lifting weights. So I kind of got a sense of like you do one or that you do the other. Like there's not somebody that like does both of them. So um, there was a girl that worked with me while I was there, and her name was Julie Scanlon. And if you look her up on Open Powerlifting, she's a multi-ply, single ply, and raw lifter. But she was a 165 power lifter at the time, and she had like a 300-pound bench. And that was insane. That was incredibly insane. And I think it was even higher than that. I would obviously have to pull it up and look, but she was a power lifter and she was trained by Captain Kirk. And yeah, our gym that I currently go to now hosted a Quad City Fit Expo. And at that first Quad City Fit Expo, they had Brian Shaw from World's Strongest Man. They had Captain Kirk, they had Julie, and they had a couple other like really big name people that I got to meet and really experience. But part of that Fit Expo was a push pull meet. So people would just, I heard out in the community through other gyms, they'd be hosting a deadlift competition. And I'd just kind of be like, I want to do that. So I'd sign up for it and just like put up whatever I could that day without really knowing what I was doing at all. Then I started dating that guy, and he was really the one that kind of cracked down and showed me like, this is how you arch in a bench press, and this is how you use leg drive, and this is how you like pull the deadlift bar into you, and you like just he would teach me just like all these little things that you normally would not get unless you knew somebody in the sport. So he had already done a competition. So it was just kind of like I tagged along for his training sessions and I learned through what he was doing. And then I signed up for my first meet, and that's where I put up like that 914 total. But even before that, even before I started training powerlifting, I was so scared to do upper body in the gym, like period. And I trained probably legs for like 4 years straight. So it explains a lot about why I'm so good at squatting, and like my squat and deadlift were very ahead of my bench for a long time. But yeah, that's kind of the intro of how I got started into powerlifting. I just kept going. Like I just stopped like thinking that this is not something I don't want to do. And I'm just like, okay, this is what I do now. This is what I'm going to go to the gym and do every training session. And I've been doing it since 2013 like that. So
I love it. So
stayed
then
with it.
that time between through college, all that stuff, it was mainly just you were training the barbell, lower body focused, not
Yep.
formally until that 2013 period. And then you started getting more structured, more learning things, and then found the cube method, and that led you into your first meet.
Mm-hmm. When I was in college, I even took it was like a weightlifting class. And the first day of class, he's like, all right, this is the gym at the college. And you guys meet here on class times. And I want you to go out and find a program. And basically you run this program for the whole time that you're in college course. And then I want you to write a report about like how well you did. And so, yeah, like it was kind of cool. I just picked the cube method and then did that when I was in class, and did it 2 other days or one other day outside of school. And I think I had like 5 weeks left after I graduated. So it was perfect because then I could use a peaking block that we just kind of wrote up and figured out. But yeah, that's how it went into my first meet.
I love it. So then going over, you kind of already touched upon those next few years. First meet, little over a 900-pound total, over 400 dots. Like for that time frame, that was pretty impressive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously with frustrations, you're competitive. You competed for all these years in another sport. You're wanting to make faster progress. You're not necessarily doing that. But take me through, I like to hear the perspective of powerlifting through other people's eyes in that time frame of 2014, 2015, 2016. Because I really feel like 2016, 2017, 2018 is when powerlifting really started going on the up and up, in my opinion, someone who's been in it since 2012. So kind of take me through it through your eyes, through competing during this time frames. Who are you looking at? What are you watching at? Are you on social media? Like what was it like for you?
So when I was working in college, really there was Facebook, and then I want to say by the time my sophomore year rolled around, there was Instagram. And by that time, I didn't even know what to post on Instagram. I think I had like a couple of videos of me doing tumbling passes from cheerleading in college, but otherwise it was like posting party pictures out with friends and stuff. And then we started going to the gym. I did my first deadlift only contest. And when I did that, I met this guy named Jake Hartman.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So Jake lives about 3 hours away from me. And he was at that same deadlift only contest. And we kind of had this like sit down, get together about like, please show me like how you are so good, like technically. And he's like, let me explain to you how to be an individual power lifter in the gym. He's like, this is what I do every training session. And he's like showing us how to set up the camera on the side of your squat, showing us like what to look for in a bar path, like over top of your foot. Versus, yeah, like he's showing us all those things that it's like, well, duh, that's obvious now. But like back then, nobody was, it was almost like the best kept secret. And the way we learned was through YouTube, and watching Dan Green and Pete Rubish and all those animal dudes. That was like the biggest thing. And then I'm really lucky to be in the location that I am, because about an hour north of us is the UPA. The UPA meets. And so I actually would get to go watch Eric Lillybridge in person and Dan Bell in person. And Janice Finkelman was like the first female powerlifter that I like saw in person. along with Chloe Lansing. So me and Chloe are like the same age, and we came into the sport around the same time, and we're only about an hour away from each other. So that was always cool. But everything else you just kind of had to look for and find on Instagram through like the hashtag of powerlifting. Like everybody would upload their 15-second clip and then hashtag powerlifting, their weight class, how many weeks out you were, and just like these just like random things. And that's how you would know like what they were prepping for. But yeah,
but you know what's fucking insane? Everyone that I talked to, we're all about the same age. A lot of us that are around, 30 or so, they came into the sport at the same time. What's crazy when you really think about it, like we all had our eyes and we're all aware of those same like couple of people,
yeah,
the same couple of resources. And that's what kind of brought all of us up together. But then you look at it right now, like you choose any one person in a powerlifting competition and they may have no idea who the other person's motivation, present day motivation is. There's so many different resources, so many different people to look at. It just that's just absolutely mind blowing in that sense, how far it's come. But we all, from that same era kind of have those same roots, and it's really cool to hear the story, the perspective from different people's eyes. And you were very fortunate in the place that you were at, because those were a lot of everyone was watching the Eric Lillibridge, right? Everyone was watching. And then Andre Milenichev, who would come over here once in a while, or he'd go over to Australia, or he'd be in Russia. But in the US, the big guys that we're looking at were guys like that, and Dan Green, obviously, before. So that's very cool that was in your own backyard and getting to experience that.
So what was even cooler is my first coach I hired, his name was Stephen Smith, and he was an elite FTS athlete at one point in time, but he was really good friends with a lot of those people. So he hosted this non-sanctioned powerlifting meet called Party on the Platform, where he invited Dan Bell, Stan Efferding, Andre, and Ed Cohen, and they all took turns judging the meet, and it was so fucking fun. Like, sorry if I can't cuss on here, but that was probably the coolest meet ever, and it was just so fun to be part of, because I was like one of the top, like I squatted 551 at that meet, and that was back in 2019. So that was a huge deal back then, but now it's like that's just kind of like that's little tiny girls are doing that now. So it's like, it's come so far in like the past 5 years.
550 is still pretty freaking nuts. That's still like a 1 or 2%er. All right. Give yourself a little credit. But let's talk about that. I think that's a perfect meet to kind of talk about the pivot of, you were already really strong. You were already squatting, over 450, by 2018, huge breakthrough like that. But let's talk about that. Do you feel like that was your really big kind of breakout where you realize like, oh shit, I'm well above the pack?
No, like, so it's funny that you say that, because I don't feel like I've ever hit that point. Like, and that's just like a personal downfall of mine, of like, I am the type of person that I'm like, okay, like good is never good enough. Like you can always do something better, and you can always like reach higher. And like for the longest time, my like saying was no ceilings. Like I would hashtag on every meet prep, no ceilings, because for me, if I thought of a number in my head that I wanted to reach, like there ain't no way that I was going to reach that number. But if I didn't know what was on the bar, I could rep that number. Like, and that's just how mental I was of a lifter back then. Totally different type of lifter in person now, but I had to really go through that, like building confidence in myself that I can get stronger and I can do these things, because for 4 years I was like turning my wheels, not progressing. So yeah, I still struggle with that of like, am I a pro power lifter, so to say? Is that a thing? Or am I ahead of the game? But I think if I had to look back at my powerlifting career, I did that meet. And then I got invited to the tribute. So yeah, in a way that would have been like the meet that I'm like, oh, this girl is like way stronger than just like local level. Or even I did the power surge. I won the power surge almost right before that meet. I did like 4 meets back then, back to back to back. And that's when I like just really put on a lot of strength. But by that 4th meet, I was definitely like had some confidence. Like I'm a little bit better than what I thought I was, and I'm gonna stick with this for a little bit longer. I tried to pull 500 at that meet and missed it. So it's just like I always still, even back then, just had something that I was just like, okay, I have to go pull 500 now, like back to the drawing board. So mentally, powerlifting has been the most like stimulating thing in my life in a way.
Well, I think what's really cool, just kind of looking at this history. So going from that meet where you're like, I only squatted 550 relatively nowadays, then later that year, like you talked about, you went to the tribute, competed raw, but then you went back to wraps at Power Surge and you tented a 606 squat.
Oh yeah.
That's absurd to go from just squatting 505 to then attempting 606. That's massive, getting to a 286 bench. And then by your next competition, you talked about how insane it was that one of those first ladies that you trained with, seeing her in multiply benching 300, then you became a 300-pound bencher.
And honestly, I've had like a couple different coaches throughout powerlifting, and I was thinking about this earlier today, like even because, I talk to Michael every day, Greeno. And he's just so different from the other coaches that I've had. But with Stefan, he was like, he was my first coach. He was the person that really spent that time in person with me, teaching me the little things, like how to brace and like how to grip the bar and how to just like how to mentally convince yourself that it's just lifting and like you're fully capable. Like he's just an all around, like he's the perfect beginner's coach. Like if you want to just take the best, like just take some random kid off the street and make them a phenomenal athlete, like Stefan could do that. I fully believe that, because he did have a lot of clients at the time that were extremely strong too. Then I moved on to Ryan Silva. So I was coached under Ryan for quite a while, and Ryan is such an incredible technical coach. Like Ryan can look at any lift and be like, you did all these amazing things right, but like I still need you to work on this and this, because like while your wedge is good, like I know you could be so much tighter into that wedge. And he would teach you these things through movements. So it's like he'd give you the speed work to be more explosive. He'd give you the high sets and low reps so that you could continuously do it right every single time and not be overwhelmed by the amount of reps that you're doing. And he was really, really good about like teaching you how to be a sustainable athlete, like teaching you how to recover, teaching you how to just take care of your body. So Ryan was really good in that way. After that, I moved on, and Ryan was a phenomenal diet coach as well. So he handled me big time. When I went into that 666 meet, he was like helping me with diet for that meet. And I would still argue that's like kind of my best meet to date. It's still my best total, even though my dot score isn't as high on that one, but like that was like my big breakout meet to me. But yeah, Ryan was a great coach in all of those aspects. Then I actually worked with Jake Hartman for a little bit, and he was a coach that was like, I'm going to give you full range of like, I'm going to write you a program, but like you need to figure your shit out. And so I became a lot more self-aware, a lot more hands-on in my own stuff, a lot more like, hey, this is what I'm feeling, and like started to give a lot more feedback and started to rely a lot less on like a coach's feedback. And then by the time I was being coached by Greeno is this coach that is just so stable. He's so consistent, and he's just so like mentally, it's like I can take this part of powerlifting in my brain and just like give it to Greeno, and I don't have to worry about it. I can just go in and lift and like tell him what I feel, and he's like, okay, let me type you the next workout based off of exactly that. So he's been a phenomenal coach for me. So as an athlete, I've just needed different things at different points in time. And I think all of my coaches throughout that were able to give those things to me. So it's like each meet I've done are special to me in a different way, because it's like I remember different things about those preps.
I love it. So, I mean, no, that was good. That was perfect. So looking at those different meets from going one to the other, you alternated between wraps, sleeves, kind of going back and forth. leading into you did, which I thought was so crazy when you were signing up for both. You went, competed at the hybrid showdown, got second overall?
Third, I think, at hybrid. Yeah.
Third overall at the hybrid showdown in January of 2022 in sleeves. That was sleeves only. And then less than 30 days later, came back to Miami, competed at the Ghost Clash in wraps, right?
Yeah.
And those were your last meets. Those were your only meets on Open Powerlifting for 2022. And we were here at the tail end of 2023. So take me through those meets into what happened post those meets into present day.
Yeah. So I guess I got to take it back to 2021 is when I squatted 666. So I actually coached myself that prep, and that was a huge prep for me. I landed the sponsor Live Large. I started coaching a lot more athletes. I think I had at least 40 athletes at one point in time that I was coaching, which for me is like overwhelming with a full-time job and everything else. But I then went on to do the showdown number 2. So, and I had hired Greeno then. So that was a huge, that was a huge meet for me. That was, I think, like really my performance, like that was my favorite, just like the most fun I had in a performance to date, was the second showdown. 2021, and then we ran straight into prep for hybrid, and I was so fatigued by the time I got to hybrid. It was not even funny, but I had caught COVID at 5 weeks out, and then I got the flu at 3 weeks out, and then I was jumping into hybrid, and I missed that 600 squat, and I was like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna get through Ghost Clash, but we threw those wraps on and we did what we could. So the end of that was just like, for me, it just felt like pure exhaustion. Like I just like could not wait to just be done competing, to take a break. And my body was just hurting so bad at that point. Like I had all these little nagging things that I was like trying to rehab the whole time during those preps, and I really just needed a break. But of course, me being me, signed up for the American Pro for year 1. Got all the way through prep until 2 weeks out, pulled my last heavy deadlift, and something in my back just like did not cooperate. So I had to pull out of that meet. And during that time, I was also thinking about competing at OSG for strongman. So strongman is the other sport that I'm pretty competitive in. I don't do it as often just because I don't feel like I have enough time to switch back and forth and still like be competitive, because it's completely different training for strongman. But during that prep for the American Pro, I had to film these online qualifiers for this strongman competition. So the American Pro prep, I was doing strongman movements, I was doing powerlifting movements, I was trying to figure out whether I wanted to do wraps or sleeves, and then I just like ended up getting hurt. So then I just jumped into like a rehab type movement program where I literally just went into the gym and moved my body and built my core back up, because that was something that, even though like you're using your core a lot in your main lifts and powerlifting, I just was not using it correctly. I had to learn how to jump again, because in strongman you're moving a lot, and that's not something you do a lot in a big static lift in powerlifting. So that was kind of crazy to learn how to be quick on your feet and not have your ankles hurt. Not something I ever thought I would have to like train again. Ankle mobility and power and how to push through your toes on things. But that prep was incredibly fun, and I ended up placing 6th at Worlds, which was pretty cool, because the people that placed above me are the people that just competed over at Giants Live. It was like a USA versus England type event. So that was really, really cool. But yeah, that's pretty much where I went and competed at OSG. I qualified online. And on one of the events, the second to last event was a circus dumbbell, and I was running out of time. It was a medley. So the weights went like 100 pounds, 120, 140, and 160. And I got 160 up to my shoulder. and I went to press it and I pressed it the wrong way. So it came down and I was running out of time, quickly had to load it back up. I had it on my shoulder. They're like, you have 3 seconds left. So I dipped and I just punched as hard as I could. And when I did that, my arm, the whole dumbbell went backwards and my elbow went forwards and everything in here just tore. So February of this year, I had shoulder surgery. I can't even remember what surgery it's called, a labrum surgery. So I had 3 tears in my labrum that they had to repair. I had a slap tear in my bicep. So, and then I had a bone spur. So I have like 5 incisions over here on this right shoulder, just holding everything back in together. We went through 12 weeks of PT, and then I was in the gym a lot during PT, just doing extra everything just to try to get it moving as fast as it could. And I really can't complain. It's held up really, really great. It's feeling good. It actually, some things feel better than before shoulder surgery. So I'm just kind of taking it training day by day now and really listening to my body and not going in and like, every athlete has those days where you go in knowing that you feel like shit and that you probably shouldn't be training. And you just hope that by the time I warm up, hopefully I'm feeling a little bit better. And I am now doing that. And when I realize it's still moving like shit, I shut it down. And then I'm just like, okay, that turned into a GPP day and I'm going to do some cardio. And at least I came in and I moved, but we're going to save like lifting for when my body actually feels good and it's ready to lift, because really sucks having to take that break and having to just like be content with knowing that you're not going to be lifting heavy for a long time.
Well, I mean, it shows,
it's really hard.
it shows discipline too, because a lot of people
Yeah.
would want to be rushed. Okay, they're like, "Oh, my surgery's February." Well, I mean, the American Pro's not till November. You know what I mean? Maybe I can make that happen. Maybe I can this, that, and the other. So it shows, discipline, and it was, I think, very smart, to be able to do that. So through all that kind of rehab, how long? Because I mean, that's extensive. That was full snap city of the shoulder, right? That's just one little thing. That just like it gave me goosebumps just thinking about it, right? So through that kind of PT, do you feel like your shoulders now currently back to normal? Do are you feeling like you're going to be able to be 100%? Granted, you still have, we are this week 20 weeks out, which is fucking 5 months. So you still have all the time in the world, right?
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of time still to train and get my numbers back into where I'd like them to be. I'll be in a weight class lower than what I left at. So that's kind of exciting to have a whole new weight class to fill into and just see where your numbers are at. I haven't competed at 220 since that meet, that JB Boss Party on the Platform meet. So where I squatted 551. So we'll see what I can do in sleeves this time around at 220. But yeah, when you said it's really hard to have like that self-discipline of like, you're not ready. I was even offered a spot at a strongman competition, America's Strongest Woman, and it was based off my placement at Worlds, which I thought was really cool because it's a pro only meet, but I'm not a pro in strongman. I never went through the whole like go to the Arnold and win your pro card thing. I just signed up for that online qualifier and placed. So it was really cool to be invited that way, but I looked at the weights and I'm like, these are world level weights and I can barely squat right now. So I don't think this is smart to even entertain the idea. So this surgery has made me change as a person too, because, I feel like all of us athletes from that era are just like, I'm an athlete, I'm a power lifter. And it's so hard to like transition to like, okay, now I'm an adult and I have a family and I have a job that I have to take care of. And I have other hobbies that I haven't even explored. And I really had to do a lot of that during the time that I was in a sling and when I was rehabbing everything. I coach high school cheerleading now, which is really cool. And it's at the high school that I went to. So it's awesome that you brought that up earlier about like you had teachers and stuff get you involved and that's kind of how they taught you. And I actually coach a 16-year-old that goes to that high school, and he's incredibly strong, incredibly strong. So I'm always asking him, like, who teaches you lifting, or like, who's your PE teacher, just to see if I had that person. Or yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's led to a lot of other things in my life too, like getting that break, which it was really hard mentally, but it forced me to like grow. So I'm coaching younger athletes now, which I much more prefer in a way, because you get to mold them into just like all the right things. Um, I did photography with Raven Bell is her Instagram name, but she does photography for the UPA. So I got to do that with her, and I'm thinking about getting into that for powerlifting and strongman. I had so much fun. And then I talked to Adam Riviera a little bit just about photography in general. And I'm like, yeah, I really want to explore this. So it's like just being in powerlifting has opened so many other doors just in different areas that I'm also interested in, that I never thought like would be opportunities for me. So it's been a ride for sure, but I guess I'm always an athlete at heart. So I just had to sign up for Ghost Clash as soon as it came out, because I was like, all right, that's enough time. I think I'll be good. I think we'll be ready. So I'm looking at that world record total. I think we can pull that off. So we'll see.
I love it. So no, it's so cool to hear how things have come full circle for you, even down to being involved in your high school's cheerleading team again. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so true, that powerlifting, sometimes people struggle with the competition side of it, making it their complete identity. And
Yeah.
if you weary from that, you're so lost. But the cool thing is there's so many other fulfilling sides of it and other
Sure.
fulfilling roles and things that you can be involved in, that when, things fail or things are step backs from being just the athlete, you can get involved in other things if you weren't already involved in them, and I think
Mhm.
it's important for people to hear and thinking, because that's also what's going to keep the sport growing and keep it thriving. That as soon as you get some kind of what seems like, a astronomical injury, instead of questioning, oh, is my career over? Is powerlifting done? Goodbye. I never want to hear the word powerlifting again. You're still involved, but in other atmospheres or in other aspects, and then you can always make your comeback. And, it's cool to hear that that's your story. And I hope that inspires other people when they struggle, because the injuries are the name of the game. The severity of them can be,
Mhm.
way worse than others, but finding those other outlets in the sport are what's so important to help it keep growing. Because I mean, the point that it's at right now is just insane. Like you talked about the 16-year-old kid at the high school,
Oh my gosh.
huge percentage of my gym members are kids that are 16, 17, 18. I just ran my last USAPL meet at my gym 2 weeks ago, and literally almost the entire morning session were these little 15, 16, 17-year-old boys with their family out in the
Yeah.
crowd. It was so freaking cool,
Yeah.
So you need the older heads like us, who might not be fully washed up. We're still making cracks at things, but we're able to
Great.
help inspire and help give back in other ways. So that's very cool.
It is cool. And it's like, it's something that I've always wanted to do. Like, I've coached cheerleading for almost 15 years now. So it's like I've been involved in all of that. And I remember I started coaching powerlifting in 2020, and I just did not feel confident as a coach or my abilities. And now I have a 19-year-old that's squatting 650 in sleeves at 220 and pulling 661. I have a 16-year-old that's squatting 500 and deadlifting 500 at 181. Like, and it's just like, it's insane to me to see these kids with this talent, and it's like how much it's grown. And I'm like, you don't even know how strong you are. Like, but it's also crazy to me that they're coming to me and like asking me for help. And it's also insane to hear them say things like, you changed my life, because I'm just like, just by being nice to somebody, just by like giving them little tips and making them feel like they matter, like I changed their life. Like, that's so crazy to hear. But I look at my coaches like that too. So sorry, I get all emotional about this, but it
I love it.
is crazy. It is crazy.
Yeah, no, it's for me, it's so cool because I mean, some people know my story, some people don't. I touch on it every so often, but it's ultimately finding the CrossFit gym that I started working out at is what got me sober and completely changed my life, going from a path of selling drugs and robbing people to, realizing that saved my life and that fixed me. And at 19, I'm like, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to help other people, and to be able to make the impact that I have in every which way, whether it's my gym and making a home in a community, these powerlifting meets that I'm able to make this platform for all these people, this podcast that I'm able to talk to people like you and they're able to hear your stories. It's really cool. And it's like I said, it's like competing isn't for me. I haven't competed in a few years now. It was too stressful. I didn't love doing it. I did some of the accomplishments that I wanted to. I benched 500 in competition, things like that. Cool. Got them done. But for me, it's so much more fulfilling what I'm able to do for the sport and to really just help and inspire and change people's lives, because I know how much it changed mine. So thank you for being one of those people as well. It's, it's important. We need those people who are willing to give and not just take.
Yeah. And like, even before I did all that, I judged powerlifting through USPA. When they finally made the switch, I was just kind of burnt out on traveling and like giving so much of my time. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna take the judging portion of it and being involved in that part and put it into coaching. So, yeah, even like you said, even if you can't be there to compete or it's not for you, because like, even me, like, I don't know if you saw me in the back room of Ghost Clash, but I was throwing up before squats, and like, I get so anxious, and I call it like sea legs. I have such a hard time with wraps because I feel like I'm on a boat. Like, I can't walk, like I can't. And so I have days like that on the competition floor, and it's really hard for me mentally to just say stop, like get yourself under control. But I've always been like that, whether it's been in cheerleading or powerlifting. I talk about to my athletes a lot of times, like, when you're on that floor, you have to become like a different person. You're like a character. Like, if you're not a confident person, you have to pretend you are, because you are going to be a lot more confident deadlifting thinking you're going to get it versus like you're not. So like, fake it till you make it. But then at one point in time, you do start to become that more confident person, and that does become you. And yeah, there's a lot of mental sides to coaching, but I'm definitely not somebody that's like, oh my God, I love competing, because it is a lot of stress, and it's a lot. It takes a lot out of you, not just like leading up to it, but even recovering afterwards and stuff. So I get it.
I would never would have guessed that, having your open powerlifting history open and all those back to back bangers. So,
I do that because I've already like say, I like switching back and forth between sleeves and wraps, because it's like if you go back to sleeves after you did wraps, you're used to having that heavy weight on your back already, so your sleeve squat goes up too. So it's just it's neat to go back and forth that way. But I also look at it from like I can only spend this much of my life this year on this section, and like then I need to do other things throughout the year. So yeah, I like competing back to back to back, but obviously it's not for everybody.
For sure. So that gets us into Ghost Clash, right? So you said, you already told us, 220, new weight class that you haven't done in quite a few years, all-time world record totals in grasp. Anything else that you want to speak into existence that you kind of have your eyes set on?
I don't know.
Potentially come back for that 600-pound sleeve squat?
Man, I would love to. So those are the things that keep me up at night. The 600-pound sleeve squat, and like that wrap squat prep. I squatted 660 in prep, and I was like, man, 700's just around the corner. But you get to that point in your life, and I don't know. I've talked to Dan Bell about this a lot, where it's like, you are capable of doing those things, but the crazy amount of work and like parts of yourself that you have to give in order to like reach that goal. And sometimes it's really hard to convince yourself like that it's worth it. Like, especially as a female, we get into the non-tested side. It's like, how much are you willing to give of yourself in order to squat 700? And so during that break. And like, even when I was competing the last year of that, I really had that hard sit down question with myself of like, how much are you willing to go all in? Or are you willing to like say, okay, like, I know that I can do this, but how much of my life am I willing to give to this is how it
Is it
feels.
worth it, right?
Yeah. So it's a big question mark. Big question mark. So Ghost Clash will be my tester meet to see if like, hey, we keep doing this. And we keep pushing it. And I'm just a very big person on like whatever happens, happens. And like whatever comes next is going to come next. Obviously, I have goals and ambitions, but I've learned a lot through the years that you have to be resilient and you have to deal with what life gives you. So, like, that's just, I don't know. That's my outlook on what's yet to come. Maybe I go back into strongman. I don't know. I just like to keep all of my options open, I guess.
I think that's perfect. I think that's a perfect teaser of what is or isn't to come at the Ghost Clash, right? I'm really excited to see what you do. I'm excited to watch your comeback after these injuries. It was awesome seeing you compete at the first Ghost Clash.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited to see that. Excited to see you in sleeves. Who knows what's next after that? We'll have to stay tuned. They'll have to watch your progress. Let everyone know where they can find you. Let's sign us out.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Kiersten.Nall. Facebook I only use for like family and stuff, but yeah, that's my main social media page. And yeah, I super enjoyed being on the podcast today.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you for hopping on, and thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of the WRPF podcast.
Awesome. Bye.